All right, everybody, welcome back. It is Sunday, June 8th, about 7 p.m. Continuing on with the theme for the weekend, I'm going to highlight some articles from The Atlantic this weekend, theatlantic.com. I highly recommend that everybody subscribe to that website. The Atlantic, along with the Bulwark and Talking Points Memo, are kind of my three go-to websites during this period of time. So, for people who don't know me, my name is Hawk. I have been a trial attorney in California for about 26 years. I'm a news and politics junkie, and I make videos talking about news and politics and the law. If you like this video, please click like, leave a comment, subscribe to my page. It's free, please. Thank you. And so I recorded a couple of videos yesterday, early afternoon. Since then, we've seen a lot of things happen in Los Angeles, and we've seen a lot of things happen with President Trump relative to Los Angeles and executive order that he signed, deploying the National Guard. I made a couple other videos with some details about the law on those things. You can find those on my page. I posted those within the last 24 hours. So David Frum is one of the writers for The Atlantic. He's also a frequent guest of Tim Miller's on the Bulwark Daily podcast. He put up an article earlier today, Sunday, June 8th, called "For Trump, This is a Dress Rehearsal. Ordering the National Guard to deploy in Los Angeles is a warning of what to expect when his hold on power is threatened." And yeah, I mean, I'm sorry I don't have, happy things to post. On my TikTok page and my YouTube page earlier today, I did post about a 5-minute long video of myself and my brother at the beach here in Marin County with our dogs. But everything else is just straight up ass. It's just awful and terrible. And, it's here, man. It's here. Authoritarianism is here. It's here. And we have to deal with it now. And we are watching Donald Trump kind of play this out in real time in Los Angeles. Potentially the worst fucking city in the United States for him to engage in this behavior. It's literally the city that is the home of fuck the police. And, your everyday Los Angeles civilian citizens are not fucking around with this. And that could be good. It could be bad. They are standing up to this president and his administration and Stephen Miller, that little rancid fucking vampire of a human being who sucks on people's hatred. And that is his lifeblood, allegedly. It's been reported. I would never in a million years ever assert something like that myself, having never met the man. He's a ghoul. But for Trump, this is a dress rehearsal. Ordering the National Guard to deploy in Los Angeles is a warning of what to expect when his hold on power is threatened. All right, let's dive into the article. I'm going to add some discussion points as we go along. Yesterday, Donald Trump ordered the National Guard to quell disorderly protests against immigration enforcement personnel in Los Angeles. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth declared his readiness to obey Trump by mobilizing the U.S. Marines as well. These threats look theatrical and pointless. The state, counties, and cities of California employ more than 75,000 uniformed law enforcement personnel with arrest powers. The Los Angeles Police Department alone numbers nearly 9,000 uniformed officers. They can surely handle a few dozen agitators throwing rocks, shooting fireworks, and impeding vehicular traffic. If and when those 75,000 uniformed personnel feel overmatched by the agitators, California can request federal help of its own volition, which it has not yet done. When California has asked for needed federal help during the wildfires earlier this year, for example, Trump has begrudged that help and played politics with it. You need to sweep the floors of your forests. You need to sweep the floors of your forests. Trump is now forcing help on Los Angeles that city and state do not need and do not want, not to restore law and order, but to assert his personal dominance over the normal procedures to enforce the law. But if the Trump-Hegseth threats have little purpose as law enforcement, they signify great purpose as political strategy. Since Trump's re-election, close observers of his presidency have feared a specific sequence of events that could play out ahead of the 2026 midterm elections. Step 1, use federal powers in a way to provoke some kind of made-for-TV disturbance, flames, smoke, loud noises, the waving of foreign flags. Step 2, invoke that disturbance to declare a state of emergency and deploy federal troops. Step 3, seize control of local operations of government, policing in June of 2025, voting in November of 2026. Some of Trump's most fervent supporters urged him to follow this plan in November of 2020. But in 2020, they waited too long until after the votes had been cast. Using the military to overturn an election already completed was too extreme a step for a Department of Defense headed by a law-respecting cabinet secretary such as Mark Esper. Trump looked to the courts instead, and Rudy Giuliani and the MyPillow guy. Only after the courts disappointed him did Trump attempt violence. And then the only available tool of violence was the lightly armed, but still armed, mob he summoned to Washington, D.C. on January 6, 2021. Harrowing as those events were, they never stood much of a chance of success. Without the support of any element of the military, which he didn't have, Trump's rioters could not impose the outcome that Trump wanted. And Donald Trump is a transactional president. When January 6th failed on January 6th, Donald Trump was still in office for 14 days. He did not pardon anyone associated with January 6th during that 14-day period of time because they failed. They failed in their mission to keep him in office. And because he is so transactional, he was not going to reward their failure with pardons. But the methods Trump threatened in Los Angeles this weekend could be much more effective in November 2026, excuse me, than the attempted civilian coup of January 2021. If Trump can incite disturbances in blue states before the midterm elections, he can assert emergency powers to impose federal control over the voting process, which is to say, his control. Or he might suspend voting until, in his opinion, order has been restored. Either way, blue states blue state seats could be rendered vacant for quite some time. Precedents do exist for such action. In autumn 1871, President Ulysses S. Grant imposed martial law on counties in South Carolina to suppress Ku Klux Klan disturbances that were interfering with legal voting. More recently, the governor of the U.S. Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands delayed elections, including election of the island's non-voting delegate in the House of Representatives, after Saipan was struck with a super typhoon in October 2018. In that same month, Trump himself claimed that a caravan of undocumented immigrants heading north towards the United States constituted a, quote, national emergency that would justify suspending civil authority and deploying the United States military in border states. In his first term, Trump repeatedly talked more radically than he acted. He was usually constrained by his own appointees. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Mark Milley, rebuffed Trump's suggestion during the George Floyd unrest in the summer of 2020 that the military should shoot protesters. You remember that? Can't we just shoot them in the legs? Which sufficed to dissuade Trump from upgrading the suggestion to a direct order. But instead of Esper and Milley, the second Trump administration's military is headed by a former talk show host facing troubling allegations of heavy drinking and sexual misconduct. He denies them. It's alleged that he's an alcoholic and a rapist. Pete Hegseth owes everything to Donald Trump. The Department of Homeland Security and the Federal Bureau of Investigation are likewise headed by radical partisans with dubious records, abjectly beholden to Donald Trump. He's speaking of Kristi Noem and Little Cash Patel. This Trump administration, and Pam Bondi at the DOJ, this Trump administration is sending masked agents into the streets to seize and detain people, and in some cases sending detainees to a prison in El Salvador without a hearing, without a conviction, without any due process for the rest of their lives, on the basis of a 1798 law originally designed to defend the United States against invasion by the Army and Navy of Revolutionary France. The presidency of 2025 has available a wide and messy array of emergency powers, as the legal scholar Elizabeth Goitin has described. Quote, second-term Trump and his new team are avidly using those powers in ways never intended or imagined. Since Trump's return to the presidency in January, many political observers have puzzled over a seeming paradox. On the one hand, Trump keeps doing corrupt and illegal things. If and when his party loses its majorities in Congress, and thus the ability to protect Trump from investigation and accountability, he will likely face severe legal danger. I mean, is from this current crop of Democrats? Okay, I guess. On the other hand, Trump is doing extreme and unpopular things that seem certain to doom his party's majorities in the 2026 elections. Does Donald Trump know that the midterms are coming, and why isn't he more worried? This weekend's events suggest an answer. Trump knows full well that the midterms are coming. He is worried, but he might already be testing ways to protect himself that could end in subverting those elections' integrity. So far, the results must be gratifying to him and deeply ominous to anyone who hopes to preserve free and fair elections in the United States under this corrupt, authoritarian, and lawless presidency. again, I wish that I had happier things to share, but I do not. It's stuff to think about. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please click like, leave a comment, even if it's a shitty misspelled mega comment. That's how we spot you guys. And please subscribe to my page. It is free. And Jesus, it's 7:20 p.m. on Sunday night. That means tomorrow's Monday. And we get to start all of this all over again. Please be safe this week, everyone. Thanks for watching.